Alright, one last July 2012 album to make a video on. I had to take a break because my camera's battery was low for some reason, even though I charged it before this, and my room was an oven. If you watch that Channel Orange video, I was probably wiping sweat off my head a lot. But I'm back, and my room is not crazy hot anymore, so let's get through this last video. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And as you can tell from the title, let's talk about the 2012 Nas album, Life is Good. Nasty Nas, New York rapper, one of the most legendary MCs to ever grip a microphone. This was his 11th studio album back in 2012, and it was his first since his 2008 Untitled record. Interestingly, it would also be his last one for 6 years, as his next album, Nasir, would be a source of teases for a while, up until its eventual 2018 release. Commercially speaking, this was the last of 3 straight albums that would go #1 on the Billboard 200 for him, and it's still his most recent one to top the chart. More broadly speaking, this album followed a bit of a tumultuous time in Nas's life. Just 2 years prior, he finalized his divorce with his wife of 5 years, R&B singer Kelis, and it's fair to say it was a bitter divorce. The two have traded abuse allegations over the years and were engaged in an intense custody battle for a while after the divorce. All of that didn't really stop Nas from putting together this album, and he worked to create a record with an old school vibe, complete with very nostalgic lyrics and a lot of reminiscing. Now, I'm not the most hardcore Nas listener. The fact that I've listened to very little pre-2010s music means I've yet to tackle some of his most iconic projects, but I'm no stranger to his music. I actually enjoyed Nasir more than most, and I've been really enjoying his late career renaissance with his Hit Boy produced albums in the King's Disease series, as well as his late 2021 record Magic. Hell, if not for this series, as well as my general busyness with a lot of other things, I'd have probably done a deeper dive into his discography by now. But I'll settle for returning to this one. It's 14 tracks in 58 minutes, which is not too long overall, and Nas doesn't waste his time here. Even in the later part of his career, I think Nas still proved, as he continues to prove, that his rap talents are incredible, and the throwback hip-hop vibes work to this album's benefit. Nas dominates a lot of the album, basically letting the production flow with him as he constantly brings interesting cadences and writing to the table. No Introduction kicks off the album with soulful pianos and massive drums as Nas talks about how he struggled to get to a good point in his life. It's an attention-grabbing intro that's very boastful, vibrant, and plentiful with energy, while Nas dominates the beat with a powerful performance. Meanwhile, Loco-Motive has a bouncier beat that still carries some of the slower feel of the opening track, almost creating this vibe of being in a New York subway. Nas weaves some great rhymes where he talks about people who are stuck in the 90s. It's a slow burner, but it's the type of track that dominates thanks largely to the artist on top of it. A Queen Story is another slightly bouncier song, where Nas continues his reflective, nostalgic direction by discussing the older street life of Queens. The track has a lot of elegant strings to go along with the busy but memorable beat, and it takes on a much more minimal piano-driven feel in the back end. Nas goes for a slightly faster cadence, and no matter where the beat goes, he rides it perfectly. He's constantly changing his flow and letting his rhymes land in different places, making this one of the album's finest points. Accident Murderers has an instrumental that takes on a bit more of a sinister feel with its piano and choir vocals, befitting to the song's theme of, obviously, murder. The hook took a minute to grow on me, but this is another song that benefits from the artists on it, as Nas is joined by Mr. Lemon Pepper himself, Rick Ross. Ross moves into a faster flow, and he can usually come through with a nice verse when he does. Combine this with Nas doing his thing, and we have a winner. There's also another winner in the track Daughters, which is another moment where you can guess the topic just by looking at the title. Nas specifically talks about his daughter, Destiny Jones, over a soulful, no ID produced instrumental. This is another one with a hook that I initially had to let grow on me a bit, but I really rocked with it for how raw and emotional Nas's bars were. He talks a lot about watching his daughter grow from his little princess to being, at the time of this record's release, an 18-year-old woman with adult thoughts and feelings. This is something I'm sure is overwhelming for a lot of parents, and Nas's exploration of his shortcomings as a parent really make it a fascinating track. Definitely a lyrical high point on the record. Reach Out is a bouncier, almost R&B influenced jam with a hook from the great Mary J. Blige. There's snappy drums, record scratches. It's definitely one of the smoother cuts on here, and Mary J. Blige does what she does best on the chorus with beautiful vocals and sticky, memorable melodies, while Nas's faster flow is potent as he raps about his paranoia and fearful thoughts that come up during a sleepless night. Something that hit me right in my insomnia, especially as I was writing this script when I was tired and really needed to go to sleep. Worlds and Addiction is perhaps the lightest song on the album. This track features some strings up against minimal drums and a prominent flute in the background. In a song about paranoia and addiction, Anthony Hamilton features and comes through with some very lovely vocals on the hook. Nas handles his business here with another slightly busier flow, and it almost feels like the cadence gets a little more urgent as the song goes on, which I think plays nicely into the song's theme of paranoia. And You Wouldn't Understand is a pretty upbeat song, but with a bit of an R&B feel to it. It succeeds a lot as the brighter vibes of it make it pretty smooth, even with the somewhat bombastic drums doing their thing. Nas rapid fires his flows as he celebrates his success, while Victoria Monet joins the party with a lovely chorus featuring wonderful vocals. Now I will admit there were some cuts I was a bit more lukewarm on. None of these were bad enough to get me ready to hit the skip button, but they did land a bit lighter than some of the other tracks here. Summer on Smash is one of the few party-centric cuts on the album, and I was warned going in this was one of the weaker songs. And while it's not the worst thing that I've heard, I do agree that it doesn't hit me as hard as some of the other songs do. Nas shows that musically he could still be a chameleon and do a nice job with whatever gets thrown at him, but the track just feels like a we really needed to do something for the summer kind of thing. The slightly more synthy production just feels a bit too standard, and while Miguel has some decent vocal moments here and there, Swizz Beatz' chorus takes me out of it a bit. I don't think it's horrible, but it's just not as exciting as the rest of the album. Back When is another nostalgic track where Nas reflects on Queens and hip-hop history. It's another cut produced by No ID that has plenty of soulful production and more of Nas's excellent rhyme schemes. I'm a little mixed on the chorus though. It's pretty much just a sample of MC Shan's The Bridge, and while I think the sample is implemented tastefully into the song itself, it doesn't really excite me and it kind of loses my attention just a little bit. It's a solid track, but the chorus does take me out a little. And The Dawn was a big surprise when it played, as it sees Nas jump on a beat with a heavier dancehall influence. Nas made this as a tribute to the 40th anniversary of The Godfather, which is cool, but sadly it doesn't really grab me all that much. I think the different direction is interesting enough and the harder drums are pretty cool, but I once again wasn't as into the hook, which sampled Dancin' in New York by Supercat. What saved it from really landing in my least favorites though is that Nas was going in on this beat. Even if I wasn't all that crazy about the song as a whole, Nas didn't stop trying. He did what he could to lift the song, but it ended up just kind of being okay to me. That's really it in terms of low points though, as the album finishes off in strong form. Stay takes on more of the old school vibes with elements of jazz and soul, making something that actually manages to be pretty chill despite having lyrics centered around pain and hatred. Nas comes through with more compelling bars, including a personal favorite of mine where he says, "I want you dead under 6 feet of soil, at the same time want you here to witness me while you in misery." What a sentiment. I honestly think that's pretty powerful. And Cherry Wine is the longest song on the album, stretching just under 6 minutes, but this was a cut I was looking forward to in large part because I was seeing beforehand that it was considered to be the album's best song by many. I was also intrigued because it featured a posthumous Amy Winehouse appearance roughly a year after her passing. Nas and Amy Winehouse shared a birthday and were apparently very close when she was alive, so I was interested to see how that came out in this song. And thankfully, it uses its 6-minute length nicely. It's a track about soulmates and love in what's one of the most romantic songs on here. Nas delivers a more subdued but still potent performance over the slightly more energetic beat, and Amy Winehouse ties things up nicely with a solid chorus that may or may not have actually been written about Nas. And Bye Baby, the closer to the album, tackles Nas's widely publicized divorce with Kelis. It takes on a pretty difficult situation in a way that could have made things even more messy, but I think he managed to handle it pretty well here. He could have pulled what may have ended up being a tone-deaf move and just made it a diss, but instead he made something a bit more reflective, discussing the good and bad elements of the marriage. It's a solid track where its sample actually ends up being a memorable chorus, this one being Guy's Goodbye Love, and it makes for a solid note to end on. Overall, Nas's 2012 album sticks out as a fantastic listen. The throwback hip-hop direction benefits the album as the production is consistently smooth and interesting with enough modern touches to keep it pretty unique. It's really elevated though by Nas himself. I think he takes what's already a strong instrumental soundscape and collection and elevates it with confident and assured performances. This is a more reflective, reminiscent Nas, one who spends a lot of time looking back but paints a vivid picture in doing so. His storytelling remains incredibly strong, and I think some of the very personal moments on here can be very poignant. It's easy for any artist to flame out as they age, and it seems to be a common occurrence to feel that rappers, once they reach their 40s, are going through the motions and need to put the mic down. Either that or they need to stop going all old man yells at cloud about things. But on his age 39 album, Nas showed no signs of slowing down and continued to put out quality work with this record. And with the direction he would go in beyond this point, it really felt like Nas was only just getting started. Back in 2012, as a non-listener of most hip-hop, I don't know if I really would have gotten this record or enjoyed it that deeply, but listening to it now, I think it's a great project and an underrated late career record out of Nas. If I had to put it on my scale, I'd be comfortable giving it an excellent rating. Wow, that would mean Nas's last 5 albums would have all gotten excellent ratings for me. Talk about consistency. But yeah, this was a really great album, and one I definitely recommend if you haven't gotten around to listening to it yet. But that's just my opinion on this album. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it back in 2012? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it back then? Hate it back then? Do you still love it now? Do you still hate it now? Are you just completely indifferent toward it? And where would you rank it among Nas's late career albums? Whatever your thoughts and experiences are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And as it's the end of the July 2012 albums, next we of course move on to August, where I have 3 albums from August 2012 that I plan to listen to. Again, I can't guarantee which ones are going to get videos and which ones aren't, so I don't think I'm going to necessarily let you guys know what specifically is coming next. I will say, on the off chance that I don't end up making a video on any of them, if I have that little to say that I don't plan to make a video, I'll either make a random non-10 years later video or just give you guys some kind of update so you know. That way we don't go throughout all of August without a long form video. Either way, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it and when it comes time for me to listen to the albums that I plan to potentially talk about in August. So stay tuned for that, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.